All right, so we are still in our study in Hebrews, and if you were able to join with us online last week, then you kind of heard how we sort of finished up chapter 10 and 11 as well. And what we were kind of hearing from the writer there of the Hebrews is, again, he's encouraging these Jewish Christians to not turn away from Jesus, get back into their old covenant lifestyle, and they were under a lot of pressure, serious pressure, real pressure. Life would have just been easier had they just gone back into that. But he lays out in several chapters on why, Jesus is so much better, and the new covenant he brought is so much better. And he's like, if you run back to that, there's nothing there for you, right? And gives a warning to them. And then kind of says to him at the end of 10, we talked about how he gives them this encouragement. It's like, dude, we're a people of faith. Like, have some faith. You got a, history of that was their scriptures, what is our Old Testament now, of all these men and women of faith. And he goes through and names all of these amazing men and women of faith who trusted in God. Some of it they trusted and they just endured and were faithful, and they never even saw the promise that was coming. They were just a part of the journey, but they remained faithful. You have some who were faithful when there was serious pressure and, fear of death. And you had some who had faith when God was giving them promises that seemed impossible, right? We talked about Abraham and Sarah, And she is told she's going to have a baby at 90, right? And we said if your granny comes and says that, that's when you know she's definitely, she's losing it. She's getting pretty old, And she does, like starting a family. It's a great time to start a family at 90 years old. Now, several people pointed out, there's guys who are really old who have babies. Not with 90-year-old women, they're not. All right? I get that. You okay. You can still figure out how to make that happen if you're an older gentleman. But the ladies, that was all God. Right? And it goes through, and he's talking about all of this faith, and it's this idea of let's not give up. Let's not go back to what we had. Let's keep moving forward and following Jesus. And I know it's tough, but put your faith in him. And then it picks right up into chapter 12 where we're at this morning. And it says this. We're going to read these first 3 verses first. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. See how he picks up off this thing. All of chapter 11 is like this. Look at this great person of faith, and this great person of faith, and look at this great person of faith. And then hits, and he goes, okay, therefore, since we are surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses. You say, does that mean they're up in the clouds looking down on us? There's very little theological evidence to prove that's happening. But I guess I can't prove that it's not either. When I read that, it's who are we just talking about? We were talking about those witnesses, right? And what were they witness to? They're witness to faith. And so he's saying, looking back and seeing all of that, he says, then guys, let us run this race. Throw off everything that hinders us. And we get this race imagery. And you think of like a marathon or something. Is anyone, we have at least a couple people you run marathons in here, right? Yeah? No hands, you're a little ashamed. You didn't win. Is that what it is? You didn't win. You ran the race, but you didn't win. That's my joke for everyone who runs marathons. Did you win? It's like, come on. Or I had a trainer for years get me back into shape until this last year. Just did the home gym thing. But last year, my trainer told me how he was starting to train for a triathlon. It's a question you want to ask is why? Why would you do that? What exactly is that? He's like, well, I got to swim over 2 miles and then bike over 110 miles and then I run 26 miles. Why? Why are you doing And now the thing with that is that requires some training. right? The biggest thing he was concerned about was the swimming because he's not much of a swimmer. And he actually thought the cycling would be the easiest because he's got like a little Peloton and he was used to doing that. And the running, he's like, yeah, it's just running. Okay, yeah, right. Yeah, I'm like, okay, yeah. And what's funny is I remember the day that it happened. It was like, remember we got a real intense heat spell towards the end of summer last year. And it was like the hottest day of the year. That was the day the triathlon was. And I said, how? And like, yeah, he wasn't in on that Monday. I think he took off because it was like a Sunday race or something. And normally I met with him on Mondays. And he's like, I'll see you on Wednesday. And he was there, and he said, I know he was most concerned about the swimming. How was the swimming? Oh, that was fine. So was the biking okay? He's like, that's what killed me. He's like, it was always just uphill. And he's like, and as soon as you go downhill, they built the race to where as soon as he got to the bottom of the hill, there was a sharp turn. So you don't get to coast. You had to stop. And then what was at the end of that sharp turn? Oh, another hill. Perfect. You do that for 110 miles, and then go and run 26 miles. So I've never done that. I'm sure some of you out there have done that, and you're all crazy. But I've never done it, and I know that if I'm doing that, I do not want to have to carry anything extra with me. This is why. Have you ever seen, photos, whatever the triathlon folks wear? It's just big spandex, right? Tightest, lightest thing, which they're running triathlons and doing all that stuff, so they've got bodies where, they can do that. But you're right, they got that on there and just everything, and it's, for the water part, maybe they'll put on a little a wetsuit thing, and then, for the biking, they got to put on the helmet and the funny shoes that they click in, and usually have wraparound sunglasses. You've all seen people on their cycling around here. And now, here's the thing. If someone here was really into cycling, and you're out there and you're going to bring your bike to church, and you walk in your cycling outfit, and you're all spandexed up, and you got your hat on and your wraparounds, and you're clicking on your little shoes, click, click, click. We'll welcome you. I might tell you to put some pants on, but you come in here, but you'd look weird, wouldn't you? Everyone would notice that person, right? If there was someone right now who was in here in full spandex with a bike helmet on, my guess is I wouldn't have to say, did you guys see him this morning? That's all. Yeah, that's all. I saw too much of him, to be honest with you. I don't want to see him anymore. Because in the wrong circumstance, that doesn't make any sense. But the same thing, if I show up for a triathlon and I'm dressed like this, they're staring at me like, what the heck's wrong with you, dude? Well, I feel I'm just more comfortable in this. Okay. I tell you what, I go and jump on that bike. I don't have to get in 100 miles before I'm, I understand what chafing means, right? And you understand, like, why they wear what they wear, and it's very uncomfortable, and I don't like putting a sport coat on when I'm playing the guitar, much less I'm trying to ride a bike. What would you do? You'd get that off. You'd put on the right stuff. And when you get around the right people, it actually kind of looks appropriate. Well, in the same way, in our race that he's kind of using this imagery, we're in this race of faith, following Christ. We're Christians following Jesus. That's what it means to be a Christian, is we're followers of Christ. And he uses this race imagery. He's like, dude, there's some of you, you're sitting there in your hoodies, in your sweatpants, in your rain boots, trying to run this race. Let that stuff go. But I don't want to. I'll feel weird. It's like, no, it's harder to run that race that way, isn't it? You say, well, what are those things? Well, it talks about, of course, the sin that so easily entangles, and sometimes that's almost the easier thing to point out. Because most of us, if you're sinning in your life, you're like, yeah, no, it's true. Now, unless you're just actively, I don't care, I'm going to keep on sinning, which the writer of Hebrews warns us a couple chapters ago. It's like, don't do that. You're running away from God. That leads to death, dude. Don't do that. But all of us deal with something, right? And you get this sin stuff entangled, so you kind of understand, I got to get better at this, and I need to not lash out so much at that, and I need to not always act out in this way when this thing comes around. I need to start, getting that sin out of my life. Okay. We can agree we need to do that. And it's a work, right? We don't perfect that. Okay. But then there's other stuff that hinders us. Stuff that quite honestly seems like it might be kind of good stuff. Or like friends are good to have, right? I mean, Scripture tells us how we're supposed to be friendly. A chapter or so ago, he's telling us, guys, don't stop getting together and encouraging one another and hanging out and being friendly. But how many know sometimes friendships can hold us down? You got people in your life that it's just, you get around them and it's just like, they bring out the worst in us. And yet we love them. And you think like, but it's good. I got friends and I do this. But yeah, is it hindering you? And the truth is, when you get around him and you acting like your Christian self, you feel like you're standing in a spandex outfit around him. And they're staring at you. Something's different about you. So you want to take that off, put on some normal clothes, and get around my friends. That makes running the race harder, doesn't it? There can be family relationships that hold us back. There can be business. Well, shouldn't we want to work hard and do that stuff? Yeah, that stuff's in the Bible. Work hard, be successful, be smart. But you can let that become a hindrance. You say, how? Anything that in your mind is more important than God, it's a problem. And it can be a good thing. But if all of a sudden it slides up over there, it's hindering us. And he's saying, why would you do that? You're out there on a 110-mile bike ride, and you got, a snowsuit on, and you got a backpack on, and what are you doing? Well, but it's kind of comfortable with it. Yeah, but we're running in this thing, and it's hard, and you're struggling. I guarantee you. If there was a guy out there decided to do all of that in jeans, maybe he might pull it off, but I guarantee you it's not going to look as easy for him as everyone else. Now, Jesus, who we love, he's the one who gives us his grace. He's the one who did all this work, and the writer of Hebrews is talking about all the stuff he did. He warns us of this. Luke 14, verses 26 and 27. He says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. That weirded some people out when he said that. It's like, wait, what? I thought we're supposed to love everyone. What do you mean hate? Now, he doesn't mean you need to call up your sister right now and say, I hate you. Some of you be like, can I, please? Oh, I've been holding that back. Wait a second. I can. What he is talking about, and he says, because he says even your own life, he's like, it's something to follow Jesus. We have to sort of, whatever those things are in our hands that we're holding on to, that it's hard to let go of, he's like, can I just open your hand and release that? You're making that the most important thing. Unless God is number one in your life, and then that drives and dictates things. That affects how you treat people. And I don't think anyone to read through the scripture and say that Jesus seems like a real jerk. He doesn't love people. He's after his own interests, right? He is the most loving. And he's telling us we have to do this to follow him to be like that. And it's kind of this, I'm preaching it because it's in the Bible. Okay. I didn't just feel, I don't want to get up and just yell at people. But it's one of those things, it's kind of like a sobering reminder of like, yeah, shoot. God, to follow you, I need, what is it in my life? And we all have stuff. We all have stuff that we're showing up in the race, and then it's kind of like, why do you got that on? Oh, I thought, can I not wear this? Shouldn't I? You shouldn't. Get that off you. It's holding you back. It's slowing you down. Yeah. And it's not to throw all this pressure on that whenever you trip up or you find something you got on. No. The idea is that we're just kind of slowly letting God speak to us, let him show and reveal into us what are those things that are holding us back as we're running this race. Because remember, these people are kind of going through some tough times right now. And sometimes when you're going through tough times, is where Jesus is trying to speak to us, trying to show us some things, but it's hard to hear him if we're not letting go of things. Right? You get around these friends who think differently. Okay, well, they say this is how things should be. This is how and then you start using their wisdom. And you get yourself kind of messed up, and you're still in the storm. What's going on? It's like Jesus saying, I'm leading you, but I'll be patient. Right? Israelites that wander around in the desert for 40 years. He has patience. What he wants is he wants us to stop looking and stop relying on these things in our life and all that sin, get rid of that stuff and those things in our lives that are holding us back and things we're putting in front of him, and kind of allowing ourselves to get a little uncomfortable in the same way. If you had to, well, first off, I'd be uncomfortable if I showed up to any kind of race, but especially if I had to put on a full spandex outfit. Oh, you're right. I'm like, weird. Is everyone else? I'd be the guy still have his jacket on. Are we take it off now? Are we supposed to? Is it okay now? Can we be, I don't want to be the first one, right, to show up in the spandex outfit. I'd rather be the last one. And the same thing with our faith. There's things in there that sometimes it kind of pushes us out of our comfort zone a little bit, but it's moving in the right place, which is closer to him. And that's the thing there. It says there in verse 2, it says that we are fixing our eyes on Jesus. We look at him, drop this other stuff. And then it says, starting in verse 4, he says, in your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding blood. In other words, he's saying, listen, I know it's tough, but you're still alive. It hasn't killed you yet. And it's an encouraging thing. Hey, you're not dead yet. Keep going. Verse 5, and you have completely forgotten, have you completely forgotten this word of encouragement that addresses you as a father addresses his son? And then he quotes Proverbs. He says, my son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines the ones he loves, and he chastens everyone he accepts as his son. So he says, endure hardship as discipline. Man, none of us, hardship. That's one kind of ship I don't want to be. I want to like cruise ships. I like friendships. I don't like hardships. They're not fun. But we all are going to go through them. He says this here in a little bit. He says, God is treating you as his children. He says, for what children are not disciplined by their father? If you are not disciplined, and then kind of in parentheses, and everyone undergoes discipline, then you are not legitimate. In other words, if God always kept you away from the hard stuff and you never went through that and allowed that hardship and that stuff to discipline you and get you kind of right and help you get your eyes back on Jesus and getting those things off you that you don't need, he's saying you'd be like illegitimate kids. We're walking through Target and we see someone else's kid acting like crazy. We think, oh, good Lord, right? You might sympathize, especially if you have kids. You've been there and done that. You're like, oh, Lord, give that poor woman grace. You don't step in and go, excuse me, kids. Oh, some of you are crazies might. But, it's out of a different thing. You usually just walk away and just like, oh, my goodness. But if all of a sudden you're walking through Target and you see one of your kids hanging on one of the shelves about to do some parkour maneuver off of that onto the next shelf, I know what you want to do is go, oh, that poor child's mother, I don't know who that is, and get out of there. What do? You run in, no, what? Stop! Why? Because that's your kid. You love your kid. So you discipline your kid. Now, back in the day, I think I was the last generation that grew up where it was okay for complete strangers to spank you. So some of us are like, man, random guy did something, he'd slap me upside the head, We can't do that anymore, all right? But if it's your kid and you love that kid, man, you discipline that kid. Not because you're mad, not because you're mean, not out of hate. Because you love them. Why? Because I don't want to raise a kid who thinks that who can't ever go into a Target because he thinks, well, I jump around on the shelves. You teach him, we don't do that. We're humans, child, okay? We don't jump around. We're not little lemurs and spider monkeys jumping around off of things. This is how we act. And there's times when you're in the middle of raising your kids like that, you're convinced they're never going to get it. We've all got it. If you had little kids, you ever go through that time where it's like going out to eat, you're like, oh, Lord. You're right, and you stress. Because you've learned how to act and how to be, and you don't sit at just restaurant tables and just go, ah! So when all of a sudden you take these kids, you're like, they're going to scream, they're going to yell, they're going to, I don't know, man, they better bring that food out quick because you got a time limit, right? It's like that kid will sit in that chair for so long, and then they just all start latching onto you. And, Mama, can we go? Can we do this? Can I do that? Like, just let me eat. Listen, there's been more than one meal where I have grabbed a child and said, well, apparently neither one of us is eating lunch today. Let's go sit in the car so that your mom can at least finish and the rest of your siblings can eat. And I just sit there in the car with him, and they and they kind of take one of those nice naps to the sound of, Why do we do this stuff? When they're screaming, they don't want that. They just want to let them eat what they want to eat, play what they want to play on the table, let them rip apart every salt and pepper and sugar packet, and don't you love me, Mom? And in the same way in our lives, we all go through stuff. We're all going through some kind of storms. And if every time we go through that, we get mad, we get bitter, or we just hang on to things that we think, well, I'm just going to do, well, I think this, and we're not looking to Jesus and saying, Jesus, what can you teach me through this? He's not throwing that stuff at you where it's like, oh, she's having a good day. How do you like that? Yeah, that's right. We think that. Why do we go through bad days? Because we live in a fallen world, folks. Think about it. What is his ultimate plan? The Bible tells us that we all be with him. That all hurt is gone. All pain is gone. Right? It talks about cats and dogs will get along with each other. Right? This image of perfect peace and harmony. That's what he created. That's what he wanted. It got messed up because of us. He's doing the work to restore us. So when we're stuck in this stuff that, quite honestly, humanity got us into, it's not his fault. He's in there. Let me show you how to do this. It seems countercultural to what you think, dude. But Phil, trust me in this. It's like I want it to go away. Right, when you get a sliver in your finger, you ever have to move a sliver from a child's finger? That's not something you want to do in public. Right? It's like, because if it happens, like there's no, at some point, like kids just switch a line, and it's like you could either be sawing off their arm or trying to pull out a sliver. They will respond in the same way. They don't want it in there. It's owie. Then let me take it out. Well, don't take it out. It'll kind of hurt. And then they come back, but it's owie. Yes, child. Right? It's like you got to hold him down. Everybody strap him down. We're pulling out this. And you pull out that sliver, which never is as awful as they think. And all of a sudden it can heal. Right? And a little sliver, we take him out. A little sliver can get an infection and kill us. In your life, in my life. How many times we go through something that God's sitting there saying, dude, let me help you here. And I don't just allow that to happen and understand that there's a discipline that can happen in tough times. It's not because I'm ticked off, and it's like, dude, I want to show you the right way to do things. But that's uncomfortable. No one likes going through discipline when they're going through it. Verse 11. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, amen, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who've been trained by it. I read that and I think of that story. Remember Jesus in the boat with his disciples and a storm comes. Disciples panicking. They're convinced they're about to die. And they're professional fishermen. What's Jesus doing? He's asleep. They wake him up. Jesus, cuckoo, hello. He's like, oh, yeah, stop. Storm goes away. So one thing you learn in there is Jesus is a calmer of storms. You want to know what else he is in storms? Not bothered by him. Remember, that's the guy we're following. In other words, as we get closer to God and we allow him and perfect ourselves like Jesus did, you can go through anything in your life and you're just like, yeah. Not because of ignorance, you don't know what's going on, Because you're so connected to God that it's built and produced this righteousness and peace in us. Now, we'll never perfect this, but we want to strive for it. We want to run that race, right? So when we're going through stuff, allow God to mess with you. Allow him to speak to you. Allow him to point out things in you that you need to let go of. Sin you need to kick off. Stuff that's holding you down. You say, well, it's hard. I know. That's the reason I believe he says, guys, don't stop meeting together. See, finding God, that's something you can do on your own. Following him, man, there's teamwork in that. Stay connected in faith. Get connected in with people. You see, but I feel kind of like I'm in a spandex moment, kind of walking towards people. It's okay. We're all in the same spot. I know you're convinced you got a unique messed up in your life. But we're all here for each other. Amen?